from the back of the truck where the shadows get cooked. Truth wrapped in tinfoil. Come and get it while it's hot. Tinfoil taco truck. Hot takes and guacamole. Conspiracy crunch with a side of guacamole. Aliens in the kitchen, government on the grill. We spilling the salsa. Give the Matrix a thrill. Tinfoil taco truck podcast. Buckle up, buttercup. It's about to get wild. Fresh off the truck, the truth's never mild. Tinfoil taco truck.
Hi, and welcome to Tinfoil Taco Truck. I'm Dawn's Rays.
And I'm Majestic Texan.
And today we've got a
Oh,
really good one for you. What's the matter?
well, I'm sorry. I had a cat suddenly decide to caterwaul. So, caterwaul.
That's okay. I've got trash trucks outside my house. On our local news today, we want to figure out where Mitch McConnell could be. He's been missing MIA for 4 weeks now. The leaked audio of a 911 call and cardiac arrest. Um, and nobody's heard from him. And apparently, it appears that a couple of the Republican leaders have, oh, we spoke to him, but there's no update on what happened, why it happened. And this was early June that this happened. His wife, 3 days after he was admitted to the hospital, takes off to China to visit with the Chinese vice president. She hasn't returned yet, so she's not too concerned. And there's been no word on what has happened to him.
Is she into politics as well? Or,
She, under Trump, she was secretary of, gosh, what was she under? She was running something under the Trump administration, and she was, she's worked in politics most of her married life with, McConnell. Um, so she's familiar with the goings on in our government. But yeah, taking off to China 3 days after your spouse is admitted, and I just disappeared. I
I
love my camera.
love how you float
I do. I
around
just float
during our
around and I have no idea what's
episodes.
going on. Hello, over here. Hello, come back over here. Over here. Meow. But anyway, oh, there we go. There we go. Um, so yeah, it's kind of strange that somebody, I mean, I couldn't imagine if my wife took off and left me in the hospital pretty much by myself. Their daughter deactivated her ex account just last week. So yeah, where is Mitch?
And why keep it hidden? I mean, we've been wanting this guy to retire for a long time.
Well,
So maybe they didn't, but
my thoughts are they're trying to wait until August. So I think it's like August 10th or so. If the Republicans wait till August 10th, they can fill the spot, just nominate somebody into that spot. If it's pre-August 10th, I think is the date, they'll have to hold an election to fill that spot. So that's why everything's under hush hush.
oh, okay. Wouldn't if they elect somebody, isn't that the same as
Not if you want Thomas Massey.
okay, they want a specific
Yeah,
person.
or non-specific, they don't want Thomas Massey. He's a kind of a turncoat against Trump politics. Um, so I kind of have mixed feelings over this. But it would be nice if you explain to, the world, hey, where is your most powerful Republican leader?
Well, I'm
He's missing.
convinced that he had a stroke on stage. That time or
That
else
was
he
that
malfunctioned. I mean,
I think he
something
had many
happened.
strokes.
Mhm.
I really do. And then when he got sick, and I believe it was January or February this past year,
Mhm.
we were told he was sick, and he came back, and now he went home on summer break, and next thing we know, 911's being called, and nobody has been to his house since. It's been vacant. And then his daughter, deactivates her ex account. Is she getting, questioned on, hey, where's dad? I mean, these are things that we deserve to know because he is an elected leader. And, if he's brain dead, or if, I hate to say that, I'm not a big Mitch fan because he is a rhino in my opinion,
Mhm.
old guard rhino. but I want to know how he's doing. I don't
Right.
want our Republican leaders using this. Okay, well, we're going to hold off on saying anything until after the time where we can actually put somebody in we want until the they have a general election in November.
More and
Um,
more, I've just become politically homeless. I've been disenfranchised with the Democrat Party. Make no mistake. I mean,
yes,
I voted for Democrats all of my life up until the last three elections, I believe. And
right.
I,
And
I just was, I've been disingenuous. I mean, it's just been ongoing with them. And so I found a home with briefly with libertarianism.
I like some of them. Some of them I think are
But
just,
Gary Johnson,
you know,
I just couldn't with Gary Johnson. He was
right.
too weird. And
There are
so,
some weird ones, and I mean, you got one that'll say, oh, well, if we put troops on Guam, the island's going to flip over because it'll get too heavy. No, stop, stop, stop. That's not how this works, boys and
you
girls.
might not want to smoke a doobie before you go on stage. I mean, you might want to
Or
reserve that for after the show.
we don't want to hear that if we put up solar panels or wind machines that we're going to, soak up all the sun. Stop, 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 stop.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
stop.
and I don't think the reason libertarianism appealed to me is because I am so centrist. I
Right,
mean, and I'm very fiscally or wait, economically conservative.
right.
I am all about family and family values and yada yada, but I'm also to a degree socially liberal, but classical liberal, not there's
Classical
just some
liberal
things that are
is
crossing lines for me at this
a
point. I'm like,
hundred
okay, no.
percent. Yeah, 100%. I agree with you across the board on that. And there's really no party that is seeing our viewpoint as
Mm-mm.
those central. They either want to go far right or far left. And I'm just not about that. I'm right down the middle. I believe in certain social programs, but I believe there should be a time limit. It's supposed to be a hand up, not a hand
Yes,
out,
yes.
and a lot of people, I'm not classifying any race, gender, or anything like that, but they use it as a way of life because
Hmm.
it's easy, and I'm like, that's just no. Where
It,
is your sense of wanting to be more than what you are?
I don't
You
think the
know,
founding fathers intended for it to be a career where you actually made money. It was supposed to be like I'm a cobbler during the day,
right,
and once a week in the evening, or however often, I convene with a group of people who also have their career, whatever that job,
right, farmers, whatever,
and
merchants,
we meet and we decide how the village is going to be run. Is go,
correct.
how we're going to govern the village.
Right.
And
But then you
so,
have the population that exploded, and then we wanted a more centralized government. We didn't want a king. We
mm,
felt that that was too much of the caste system where you just peasants stay peasants, the middle class stays middle class, and the ruling class stays the ruling class. Our founding fathers wanted a more farmers, truckers, people that actually made the country,
mhm.
and that was the framework they gave us. But they knew that tyranny existed. Wherever there's power, there's going to be tyranny, and
Well,
that's something. Even if these people you elect them, you think, oh, these people are great, they're wonderful, they're just a nobody. No, they've been classically trained by certain institutes, and we're going to go over that today. And that's something I think it's going to blow a lot of people's minds when we talk about what we're talking about today, which is the Tavistock Institute. It's Shadows of Influence. It's the dark side of Tavistock Institute and the modern education system. Now, leading into that, of course, we have the Mitch McConnells. We have all these people that you never thought that they would turn the way they did. But guess what? They were trained to. They're sleepers. You think they're nobody, they're not. They are trained to do exactly what they're doing. If they're starting to lose control at the tippy top, you've got these sleepers that pop up out of nowhere that we're electing and saying, okay, well, this is the change that we want, but we never see it. And that is because that is by design. Now, We're going to dig into the hidden forces that is really shaping our world today. And it's not just the United States, it is a global effect. And we're going to tackle the topic that's kind of, I guess, equal parts academic history and shadowy intrigue. And it's the Tavistock Institute and its alleged influence in our education systems and our broader society as a whole.
You said alleged, so there's
Yes,
no proof
there
per se.
is, but it's hidden in plain sight. And that's how
Okay.
I'm going to say that. And you'll see why I say it's hidden in plain sight because Tavistock Institute on its own sits on its own merit, but it's like an octopus. It's got tentacles everywhere. And you'll see when I start naming the educational systems or the departments that are in our government that are tied directly to Tavistock as we keep going over this. Now, for 75 years, the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations, it's operated as a respected British research organization, and it's focused on like a group behavior, organizational change, and social psychology. Okay, but critics, and specifically whistleblowers, uh, and conspiracy researchers paint it as a much darker picture. And I kind of fall somewhere in between. I see the good and I see the bad, but I more along see the manipulation, which that's the very much darker side that we're going to be discussing a lot today. Social engineering and psychological manipulation, it's elite driven. I mean, it's efforts to reshape all minds, especially the young. And what better way to reshape young minds is through education. Um, is Tavistock a neutral think tank? Is it applying wartime lessons to peacetime problems? Or a key node in a network designed to erode traditional family values, families, and individual autonomy through schools and culture? Now, what is the biggest breakdown that you believe, Majestic, that's causing our society to collapse now
I believe it is the breakdown of the family
of the
and
family?
traditional values. Children need a two-parent household.
Agreed.
It is I can only imagine how difficult it is. I'm not a parent, but I did watch my single mother struggle at times, to put
Right,
food on the table, to be sure that I had a good education because I was not up to seventh grade I was publicly school
right.
educated,
No,
but
I
after
agree with
eighth
you.
to 12th I went to a private school because she wanted me to learn, and she could also see where I was falling into you know a crowd that I maybe
A
shouldn't
crowd,
have,
right.
you know.
A more freer type mentality versus the structured mentality of grow up, get a job, pay your bills, have a family, have a house, retire
Yeah.
peacefully. I mean, that's kind of our American type dream. That's what was sold to us to have. And all that is based through social engineering. One of the things, stick around a little bit, and I guess this will show how you will see your classroom in a little bit different light. As always, we're going to separate verifiable facts from theories, and sources will be in the show notes like we always do. So we're going to go ahead and dive in. The origins and official history of Tavistock. The story begins not in some secret, bat layer somewhere, but it starts in the traumas of war. After World War One, the Tavistock Clinic was founded in London to treat shell-shocked soldiers. Say that 5 times real fast. Shell-shocked soldiers, which we now call PTSD. And using emerging psychoanalytical methods during World War II, Tavistock affiliated psychiatrists like John Rawlings Rees, remember the name Rawlings, played a big role in British selection boards and civil resettlement, which means they were on the rebuild committee, figuring out how to assess officers, rebuild communities, and manage group dynamics under stress. 'Cause you've got to realize London and all those places, they were bombed to smithereens. You have people that are,
Mhm.
families broken apart, not knowing where their husbands were, alive or deceased. So you had families to think of. And I think it started out in a good way to help people reassimilate back into a normal society from the terrors that they witnessed. I mean, you got to understand in Paris, they were hiding in, below buildings and bunkers, and, some of them didn't have that, and buildings were shelled, and, I've read a lot of stories about shells coming into unexploded ordnance coming in through windows and sitting there in front of
Mhm.
children. All this kind of stuff is bound to take a psychological, you know, very psychological
Mhm.
effects on children, especially. So I
I
see
believe
the need.
Orwell wrote On Writing. If I'm not mistaken, it's called On Writing. And I read it. It's just been a while. During and he wrote in it, as I'm writing now, bombs are going off.
Bombs were
We're
going
being
off
bombed because he was writing it in England. So I
during that
find
time.
that,
Right. Yeah.
yes.
It's very harsh realities what war does to any community,
Mm.
and here we are, we're looking at, all the Middle East type stuff that's going on. And I feel so incredibly sad for the innocent people that just live there, you know, and it's hard. But places like Tavistock, in its origination after World War One, the 1930s, that's what it was primarily focused for, was to help rebuild community. Now, in 1947, Tavistock Institute of Human Relations spun off as a separate entity, and it was funded in part by guess who?
The Rockefellers,
The Rockefellers.
they're
Yes,
always,
they got their fingers in every pie because, I mean, if you're talking social manipulation or social type constructs, you're going to find the Rockefellers at the end of every rainbow. Now, its stated mission was the study of human relations in organizations, improve workplaces, and apply social science to real world problems. Sounds like a great thing, huh?
pretty
Key
much.
figure, yeah, key figures would include, Wilford Bion, group dynamics, Eric Trust, uh, and others influenced by Sigmund Freud, or I should say Sigmund Fraud, because he really was a fraud, Klein and Kurt Lewin. They pioneered action research and intervening in real settings while studying the outcomes. So the concepts like experimental learning through group relations and conferences, famous Lancaster conferences, these influenced management training like NHS leadership programs and even international organizational development. Now, on paper, it's about making the systems work better for people, but I don't think it did. I think it was more of a study group and how to influence people, like Dale Carnegie, how to influence people and win friends, or is it how to win friends and influence people? That's
Yeah.
it, Dale Carnegie. But here's where it all gets interesting. Their wartime roots in psychological operations and propaganda, yes, propaganda, some trace back to Wellington House efforts in World War One. They led critics like myself and others to ask, are these tools for healing or are they for control? And I say they're for control because as I'm doing more research, I find it as a control method. And so
Well,
over
didn't
time,
they use it to propagandize, approval for war? Or we're
yes,
talking, actually, they were post World War II, though. So, but
Vietnam,
that is part of their arm.
that's the biggest part of their arm. Okay. Over time, Tavistock merged with other groups like the Portman National Health Service Foundation Trust, the Stanford Institute, the Institute for Social Relations, the Hudson Institute, the Hoover Institute, the Center for Strategic Studies at Georgetown University. And here's the most one that I find more credible because it's been in the news recently, and that's the Foundation. Think Project 2025 and Project 30, 30 or 2030. They're all from the Heritage Foundation, and they're egregious atrocities to me on the human psyche. And
What about
it's
all that Jade Helm 15 stuff? Was that also?
I
from
didn't find anything
about
for
10,
Jade Helm
11.
on when I was doing research. It didn't necessarily
Just
mention it.
curious.
Doesn't mean it wasn't part of it. Just I did not see that in my research, so I really can't speak to that as far as
Okay.
that being a Tavistock, you know,
I didn't think
simulation.
to
Yeah,
ask that when I was
that's okay.
researching.
No worries. Now, they want to influence society. That's the biggest link for Tavistock. Tavistock has been closely linked to social engineering and manipulation of public perception. Its influence can be traced back to shaping wartime influence through propaganda during World War II and continuing through subsequent conflicts. The Institute is known for its involvement, study, and promotion of mind control techniques. Think MK Ultra, including trauma-based mind controls as well as dissociative identity disorder. Now, I'm going to lead into next week's episode with this because we have something that corresponds with Tavistock, and it's part of the music industry. And you'll see why next week as I uncover this research for you, how musicians, especially the British invasion, are all psychological operations to break apart families. And this is DID, sorry, sometimes my words don't come out correctly. Dissociative identity disorder, how it is tied to Laurel Canyon and serial killers. And it's all tied back to Tavistock and mental manipulation.
So
So
there's an American, is there an American version of Tavistock? Like, is that the Heritage Foundation?
that's an arm of Tavistock. There is
Okay.
not necessarily a
But the
Tavistock.
American arm.
Correct.
Sort of.
And the American arm reaches in several locations. You're talking Department of Education, you're talking Department of War, you're talking like it's even private entities, and as we go through like Unilever and Shell, you'll see that these arms are in there and you'll understand why. Tavistock's toolkit includes systems of psychodynamics and understanding how unconscious forces, anxiety, and group defenses shape behavior. They work with, like I said, big companies like Unilever and Shell, governments and NGOs on everything from coal mining to home healthcare reorganization to education. Their influence is spread through journals like Human Relations, training programs, and network concepts like sensitivity training and encounter groups popular in the 60s and 70s. How many of us who were in the workforce had to take sensitivity training and diversity training? All that came from
I didn't
Tavistock.
have to, oddly, but I applied for, I mean, I worked at a place for 23 years, and 23 years ago, things were very different. I'd never heard of DEI or any of
It
that
didn't
kind
exist
of
pre
thing at that.
2020.
Yeah.
It really didn't,
And so,
But proponents say it fostered better leaders. I would tend to disagree, but I say it promoted conformity and eroded the hierarchy and normalized emotional manipulation under the banner of growth. And that's exactly what it is. It is emotional manipulation because everybody is so doggone, oh, you hurt my feelings, and then
hmm
we have the gender conformity issues. And then we have, you must call me, kitty cat or whatever it is they want to be called, because that's how I identify. Well,
it's such a narcissistic um, entity if you think about it, because you're asking for everyone to understand what an individual feels like on a certain day and to pick up on
exactly.
everything. I mean, I'm very good at picking up on cues. I
But
can
see, the
tell
thing,
when somebody's in a bad mood or this or that. I'm like, okay, whatever, you know.
I should
But
not have to soften my tone when I'm asking for certain information to be delivered a certain way. I don't care about your feelings. That report does not care about your feelings. I just need the figures and answers on that report. I don't need your feelings about the report. Just need
yeah,
the report. I don't care that you identify as, whatever. I don't care about your personal life. We're not friends. You
hmm
are a coworker. And the quicker that people understand that there's a separation, that I don't necessarily have to agree with what you identify as, but I should not be forced into a fantasy world that I don't see.
I mean, people getting called into HR for misidentifying somebody who is going, it's ma'am, you know? And I'm
I
sure
agree,
if anybody's seen that video, you know what I'm talking about. It's a big 6 foot
and in
dude
order
going,
for me,
it's ma'am.
in order for me to combat, not hurt people's feelings and try to be respectful, I'll call you by your name. You know, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to call
Mm-hmm.
you by your gender,
But it's
and
very hard to eliminate pronouns from your language.
and that's part of the psychological manipulation that Tavistock is behind. And it's exactly that. It is there to erode your identity. And these people are trying to grasp at some identity because they know it's wrong. They know it's wrong, but they grasp at something so that they feel special and that they're forcing you. It is a manipulation tactic, forcing you to bend to them. And no, I don't bend knees. I'm sorry. I bend knee to no man. Sorry. It's not going to happen.
Right
You will
on.
be called, you know, Jason, whatever your name is, and if I say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes or no, sir, that's who I am. I'm prior service. I was raised that way. You are not going to stop me. I still have my freedom of speech, and I try not to do it, but I'm going to do it. It's just part of who I am. It's the
Yeah.
respectful thing to do. And if I misgender you, I apologize. It's not intentional, but you're not going to force me into a fantasy world that I don't believe in. You know, I see you as Shelly. I see, and if that's your, stage name or
And it's
whatever.
not a lack of respect. It's not that
No,
you want to take the very air out of the
no,
person that you're talking to. That's what a lot of people involved in that kind of thing don't understand. It's like you're being very selfish and narcissistic by
correct,
making everyone uncomfortable. When everyone is actually trying to make you comfortable, you're trying to make everyone else uncomfortable. And
correct.
it's
And
not a matter, it's not
it's like
right to
live your
be
truth your way, but don't expect me to be perfect every time because I'm a fallible human being, you know.
right.
Now, some theorists, like such as former MI6 agent Dr. John Coleman, he's claimed that Tavistock was involved in shaping the British invasion of the U.S. through bands like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. And I would popular belief, yes, that is true. The theory suggests that the Beatles were not just cultural icons, but frontmen for a broader social engineering project aimed at reshaping youth culture and challenging traditional family values. And that's from the Brownstone Institute. They claim that bands like Pink Floyd were part of the deliberate cultural shift using psychedelics and experimental sounds to alter perception and challenge norms. And it's to break down the family values. Now, on education specifically, while not directly running schools, Tavistock methods, you know, fed into leadership training for educators, curriculum development. Think about Rand, which is one of
Hmm.
the Rand McNally, which is one of
Hmm.
the map makers and the book makers for school. That's all Tavistock. That is all 100% Tavistock. So, the curriculum development ideas around group learning and broader social policy. Now, think about this. We used to learn practical schooling. Now we're learning social schooling,
Hmm.
where you're learning how to act in society that's basically deemed you as an obsolete because you're not preparing yourself for anything in the real world. So, in
Bill
my opinion,
Cooper talked about that in Behold a Pale Horse
yes,
extensively.
yes, he did. Their work with vocational education, community programs, and organization change in the public sectors has indirect ripples on how schools operate. They emphasizing, collaboration, emotional intelligence. Now, I think some of that stuff that needs to come from the home. It's
Mm.
systematic thinking over rote individualism. I would want my child to be an individual, to be expressed as an individual, not in a group think tank, you
That's
know,
what you go
and
to school for, isn't it? It is oddly like Pink Floyd's the uh why is it on the wall
the
off
wall,
the wall,
the
but
wall.
the
Yeah.
song, we don't need no education, we don't need no thought control. And if you watch the video, all the children are marching in
Marching in
lockstep.
line.
That's
Yeah.
what Tavistock's trying to promote,
Pu-
correct?
That's what Tavistock does promote. Groupthink, line up for your drink of water. Now, remember back when we were in, kindergarten, we lined
Always
up
with the
everywhere.
line. Yeah.
Line up for your drink of water. We weren't allowed to, you know, line up to go to lunch, line up to sit down, line up to go back to your classroom, line up from PE to come back to your classroom. Everything was lines. So it taught you conformity is what it taught you, and that's why they're disavowing homeschool because homeschool doesn't teach you that conformity. So they don't want to fund homeschool parents to purchase supplies and stuff for their children because children can learn 8 hours worth of material, what would take 8 full hours in a normal school in less than three because of the distractions of the 30 other students that are in the class. And I would argue that more homeschoolers retain more information because they have more free time for their brain to develop versus putting that clamp over it and being rigid. They're making little robots with with our education system versus homeschooling where you have a more feral type, artistic or even, uh more free time to yourself to discover other things. Now, critics link this type of shift in Western education post World War II away from classical knowledge and transmission towards the social adjustment behavioral modifications and preparing students for a more managed society, which is where we're at right now. And I think that's the real of it is even under this administration, we see our society leaning towards a more managed society with more government control, more, and it's to me it's awful because it's taking away that creative freedom for our kids.
I mean, on one
SOLs,
hand, you need some kind of, you don't need a chaotic society, but it seems like the more they try to manage it, the more chaotic it becomes. Oddly,
because
it's,
we fight, it's not in old souls, I think. It's not in our DNA to be conformists. We think for ourselves and we question authority, which is
but it
something
will
that
be. I mean, they're slowly turning that toward, I mean, look at how the reaction from so many to COVID and all the demands
80,
and all the stepping in line.
85% of the United
And
States,
I'm sitting there going,
yeah,
what? Wait a minute.
slow down to go faster, people, because if
Yes.
you really think about it, where did this come from? Why are we doing these things? And my thought processes was that no, you know, there's something fishy in this. And they promoted it so much that yes, at times I second guessed it, like, should I do this? Is this no, because it was so prominent. You actually had to mentally fight it away and say, no, this is a psychological operation.
There never was a part inside of me that said, this is right, this is normal, this is exactly what they're saying. Of course, I was already awake
Right,
by that point, well awake by that point, and I'm not quite as where I am today, where I don't believe anything much anymore, honestly, or I believe maybe the opposite of what I'm being told. But at that point in time, there was never a time when I thought that was organic and real,
right.
quote unquote.
Well, with Tavistock, the social engineering program, Dr. John Coleman, he was citing intelligence, his intelligence background. He accuses it of propaganda to drag the U.S. into wars, which I think it is, promoting, counter cultures like the Beatles, drugs, rocks, and music to fracture their families and morals, undermining education to create compliant citizens. Now, we see this everywhere. Tavistock The Tavistock Institute developed the mass brainwashing techniques, which were first used experimentally on American prisoners of war in Korea. Its experiments in crowd control methods have been widely used on American public. We see it every day. A surreptitious but nevertheless outrageous assault on human freedom by modifying individual behavior through psychology. A German refugee named Kurt Lewin became the director of Tavistock in 1932, came to the U.S. in 1933 as a refugee, the first of many infiltrators, and he set up Harvard Psychology Clinic, which originated the propaganda campaign and to turn the American public against Germany and involve us in World War II. Now, in 1938, Roosevelt executed a secret agreement with Winston Churchill, which in effect ceded U.S. sovereignty to England. And I think that's when we went from small U.S. to all capital United States of America, because it agreed to let special operations executive controls U.S. policy. To implement this agreement, Roosevelt sent General William Donovan to London for indoctrination before setting up the OSS, which is now the CIA. The entire OSS program, as well as the CIA, has always worked on guidelines set up by the Tavistock Institute. We know this. They use those tricks every single day. Tavistock Institute originated the mass civilian bombing raids carried out by Roosevelt and Churchill purely as a clinical experiment in mass terror, keeping records of the results as they watched the guinea pigs, which were humans, reacting under controlled laboratory conditions. All Tavistock and American Foundation techniques have a single goal: to break down the psychological strength of the individual and render him helpless to oppose the directors of the world order. Any technique would help, which helps break down the family unit, the family in, included principles of religion, honor, patriotism, and sexual behavior, is used by Tavistock scientists as weapons of crowd control. Another prominent Tavistock operation is the Wharton School of Finance. That's a huge, huge. I've got a degree from Wharton School of Finance in Pennsylvania. You know, everybody wants
I'm
that.
better than you.
I'm better than you. Well, that's a mind control operation all on its own. The single common denominator that identifies the common Tavistock strategy is the use of drugs, the infamous MK Ultra program of the CIA, in which unsuspecting CIA officials were given LSD and their reactions studied like guinea pigs. This resulted in a lot of deaths. The US government had to pay millions in damages to the families and the victims. The culprits, Tavistock, they were never indicted. Program originated when Sandoz, a Swiss drug firm owned by S.G. Warburg, we know that name, of London, developed LSD. Roosevelt advisor James Paul Warburg, son of Paul Warburg, who wrote the 1930 or 1913 Federal Reserve Act when it was established. And
Which should
nephew
be
of,
illegal anyway.
well, this person's also the nephew of Max Warburg, who financed Hitler and set
That
up
reserve is such a cheeky word to have put in there because we know it's not a federal bank.
what just happened.
Well, federal. Is everything
Yeah,
okay?
yeah. I just sorry, my notes really.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was
That's
just
okay.
thinking
No,
of the Federal Reserve Bank it's just so uh dark and
well,
wrong
yes.
and it never should have existed and people think that it's a government entity and it's not.
No,
It's
it
a
absolutely is not.
private bank. We're giving money
It
to
is a private
people.
institution. Hmm.
And they'll put you in jail if you don't. It's just it infuriates me.
And you get a little slip of paper that says, "Hey, this is your note saying you have this much money, but it's all fake." But anyway, Max Warburg, who financed Hitler, set up the Institute for
Mhm.
Policy Studies. Now we know this. This is, big, and they promoted the LSD drug and the counterculture of the 60s, the basic student revolution of colleges, the arts and hippie movements and stuff like that. But it all was financed by $25 million from the CIA. So you see how all this is turning. Now, National Training Laboratories, which is NTL, and one of the key institutions established for this purpose in the United States, and it was founded in 1947 by members of Tavistock Network in the US and located originally in the state in Bethel, Maine. The explicit purpose of the NTL was to brainwashing the leaders of government and educational institutes and corporate bureaucracies in the Tavistock method. So you see, it's not necessarily Tavistock themselves. They just tentacled out into these things that we hold true. The Warburg School of Finance, University of Pennsylvania. Everybody, oh, we've got to have that. They're brainwashed robots,
These
you know?
universities, where
Phew.
all these years it's been such prestige and whatnot to have a degree, to have attended certain universities or whatever. You just
Correct.
and they're
And now
dark. They've been
you're finding
operating.
out that oh, I've been brainwashed by University of Pennsylvania.
I mean,
And then
Bill
you
Ayers became a college professor from the Weather
then you've got
Underground.
universities that are financing biological weapons and biolabs. That's all coming out now. University of Kansas.
What
This,
about the Stanford prison experiment? Do you think they may have been
exactly.
behind something like that? That is so evil.
That is so evil. And Stanford is on our list of educational points on,
Mm.
during this episode that is based behind all Tavistock principles. So it's amazing how you say, oh, it's just Tavistock, but they don't have anything to do over here. Oh, yes, they do. They finance it. Here are your papers. Here are your scripts. Here you go. This is what you say. This is what you do. And you get paid X amount of dollars to do
Well,
so.
let's face it, the United States has always been under the financial arm of Britain. We did win the Revolutionary War. Ha 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 ha.
Right.
But we didn't separate from them. We're kind of, Canada, sort of the same situation. They're kind of like the cousin, separation. And we separated, but quietly they're funding so much of our military, all of that stuff. And so they're the financial arm of the United States in great portion, even though they would not like to admit it. Our
Right.
government would not like to own that.
I think those that are like successfully brainwashed, they find themselves in high level government positions. They find themselves in high level corporate positions because they were successful. Hey, you want to get rich and famous? Get your brainwashed. Who cares? We'll get your money. We'll get your clout. You're fine. And but that's promoting their methodology versus being that independent thought thinker. Sorry, my brain's not braining. I'm trying
So
to do
whereas
brainwashing
people thought
myself.
they went to college to broaden their horizons, they actually maybe went to
They went and got
shrink
brainwashed.
them a little bit.
Yeah, do as I say, do as I say, do as I say.
I
This is the
mean,
only
I
method
went
that
to
works.
junior college only, and I took sociology. And the first thing, and this was an old woman, like a Ruth Bader Ginsburg type of woman, the first thing she started talking about was how great socialism was.
Right. Well, I mean, they do this process, like you're saying, to say how great socialism is, but that's part of the process. It creates the controlled environment, i.e., college classroom, and it's stress induced. So you may be, oh, give them a test the first, it- 2 days they're there on material that they may or may not know, and that's automatic. I'm stressed in this class. That opens them up to be brainwashed. Believe it or not,
Mhm.
it's a typical form of control,
And I don't want
And
to seem like I'm crapping on anyone's degree. It takes a lot of work and effort. to do that. And it
Yes,
shows
it does.
tenacity, great tenacity to complete. So please don't think I'm crapping on anyone's
I'm not
education,
saying that, hey,
you know,
you're going to be
but
a neurosurgeon and you're brainwashed to be a no, 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 no. It's certain, I would want to say more art specific or more uh,
sorry I'm drinking so much coffee, but it's coffee time.
teaching specific, more history specific, versus the STEM programs. I don't think the STEM programs would be as brainwashed, but I do believe that some of the arts-based programs are nothing but brainwashing.
Hmm.
But that's how they do it. They'll make a crack in an individual's belief structure, and then using peer pressure of others in the group members, they keep cracking on that until the new personality that they're wanting emerges with new values.
Would you put
And
it in a left wing or right wing category? Just out of
currently
curiosity.
with DEI, I would say it's more of a left type category
Do you think it
because
always was designed that way? I mean, in a
mm,
way, because right wing has always been sort of family oriented, or at least outwardly.
I think it's both parties and it's just the method of control. I think both parties use
Okay, yeah, yeah, I can.
pieces of it to control their bases and give the people what they want. I don't think it's a left or a right thing. I think it's more left leaning, but I think it is more just anybody who's going to be to control the people, They need to control, they don't need a world of free thinkers because you can't control free thinkers. You can't control me. I see through your garbage. You can't control you. You see through the garbage.
I
You
just don't
know,
understand the need for the control.
because if you have too many people that are simple minded, not being controlled, you have chaos. And I think that's what it is. It is an easy way for them to stay rich and tell us what to do so that they can get richer. There's a
Can't there
group.
be a balance? I mean, if people were educated in the school of do unto others kind of thing, I'm not saying just biblical, but of principles of treat other people the way we want to be treated, don't steal, don't lie, just the basics. They're
We're
schooled
too
and
big of a
educated.
society. We're too big of a society for the basics anymore. Though we would like to be, you have people that will take advantage of that. You have people that will poison
Oh yeah.
others and not really care. That's why we have the FDA supposedly. But now bureaucracy has come in and has corrupted them. So it's where the money is. And that's how
Mhm.
I personally think. I think our government is now, where's the money? Give me the money, show me the money, I'll do your
Just
policies.
like with the medical industrial complex, what happened to just healing people, healing and not hurting, and wanting people to actually be, quote, cured of something? Now it's not about the cure, it's about keeping people medicated
Yeah.
for the money.
Well,
It's,
keeping people sedated so they're easily controlled to do their bidding.
yeah,
You go to work, you go home, you
S
pay taxes, you pay me, you pay me. You're just, it's the new slavery. That's
and
all it
giving
is.
someone a pill as opposed to getting to the root of their problem with
Exactly.
depression or any of the mental health issues that people have.
Yeah, exactly. From the mid 1950s to now, the NTL puts the majority of the nation's corporate leadership through such brainwashing programs. Even my company, I get these programs, say leadership programs, and it's like, really? And I go through the program and Hmm, you know, I look at it like, no, this isn't a leadership program. This is how do you act? Yes, yes, yes. You know, there is no individual think anymore. They want the group think. Even this, the State Department, the Navy, the Department of Education, especially, and other sections of the federal bureaucracy programs, there's no firm estimate on the number of Americans that have been put through these processes in the last 40, 50 years. You know, it's the National Institute for Applied Behavioral Sciences, and that's even a college degree now. And they're teaching people how to push these thought processes forward with that specific degree. You know, it's based in here in Virginia. It's Rosalind, Virginia, the National Institute for Applied Behavioral Sciences. It's here. You know, now granted that helps find serial killers. That's the criminal minds thing. But it's also much deeper than that, I think. And I really would begin to say it's how are you going to control people? You know, the Western training laboratories, that in itself is that's yeah. You don't even want
Surveillance maybe has been the death of the serial killer, so to speak, you think?
no.
No? I mean,
There's
I
gonna
see mass murderers, yes.
there's
That
gonna be
has
a
on the
there's gonna
uptake.
be a new boogeyman soon, I think. I think there's
Oh,
really gonna be
yeah.
a new boogeyman soon, because they needed to control a sect of people. And I really believe there's going to be a new boogeyman coming out soon. And oh gosh, well, wonder why this didn't, wonder why this flock camera went down, wonder why that camera went down. We can't seem to, this camera is so fuzzy, but yet look at Mars. We have perfect HD TV to Mars, but you can't get surveillance cameras to do non-fuzzy stuff? Come on, man.
Just like Jeffrey Epstein's cameras in his prison cell,
For real,
yeah.
you know,
Okay. One of the
real.
highest level criminals in there, and that's the one that fails. Not even just once.
You
Pretty
know.
wild
So
stuff.
yeah, I really think it's outcome-based education, and that's what they want. They want the
Mm,
outcome-based education, and that outcome-based education is we need these test scores, and the only way to get these test scores, and they're telling the teachers, is you have to have high test scores, then you get money. So they're
yeah.
not worried about actual education. They're worried about teaching children what's on the test and how to
That
take the
No
test.
Child Left Behind sure did leave behind a lot of
It left a
children.
lot of people. And that's, I mean, that I
You're
think was
studying for a
the,
test.
yeah, that's the whole thing. Now, the theory, Tavistock Institute often ties to the Aquarian conspiracy, and it's the Committee of 300. And the Committee of 300, from when I did my research, I found on a CIA.gov website, and it was in the .gov library from the CIA, and it is supposedly founded by the British aristocrats in 1727, and they're the ones who rule the world. Proponents of the theory allege that the committee's existence believed to be international council that organizes politics, commerce, banking, media, and the military, and its centralized global efforts for the broader New World Order narratives. And by using psychology, media, and schools to engineer a post-industrial type, collectivism society, which is what you're seeing now.
Mm,
You know, it is exactly what you're saying. You see that it's in our music, our psychological warfare, mass brainwashing via social media, via education, and it is breaking down our Western civilization at its foundation, and that's the problem. Dr. John Coleman was quoted in writing, everything is going according to what Tavistock ordered and what the social scientists at Stanford mapped out. Times do not change. They are made to change. All changes are pre-planned and come as a result of careful action. We have changed gradually at first, but now the pace of change is picking up. The United States is being transformed from one nation under God to a polyglot of nations under several gods. The U.S. is no longer one nation under God. Framers of the Constitution have lost the battle. That's a powerful statement.
mm.
And that is from the Council of 300 papers that I found in the CIA.gov library
This John
concerning
Coleman
Tavistock.
guy, exactly.
Mhm.
You may have said earlier, but what is he? Is he a philosopher? Is he an
He's
author?
okay, Dr. John Coleman,
He's a doctor.
he's a
Uh,
doctor, and he wrote a book, several books
a
actually,
psychology doctor or
psychology, yeah,
okay,
and he
okay.
warned the United States and named all these entities going back as having being tied to Tavistock and the influence that Tavistock is having on social engineering. And it's exactly what they're doing now in our schools
Hmm.
and our music and in our government. It is social engineering. Mainstream thinks that, Tavistock is a legitimate charity. No, it's got its tentacles everywhere. While acknowledging it works, attracts like very fringe attention because of who funds it and who funds their philosophies from Tavistock. So that said, legitimate critiques exist over Tavistock. And I think it's really true that Tavistock is running our education system. It's hard to falsify these documents and these patterns that are coming directly from Tavistock and we're seeing in real world scenarios. And like I said, next week we're going to go how it influenced music and the Council of 300 that dates all the way back to the Roman period, which would include the Vatican. So yeah, next week is going to be really exciting. But now you see that Tavistock there's Tavistock Gender Clinic, really.
Oh,
Okay.
I could give you a gender studies course in 30 seconds or less. Go. Male, female. I'm
Female.
done.
Done. Okay. Now, the gender clinic scandals that came from this, from Tavistock, it's rapid affirmation, weak evidence for youth transitions. They're saying, oh, it doesn't happen, but it does. And you see the kids now that grew out of that after they had these gender reassignment, and now they're 25, 26, 27, 30, and they're
Mm.
like, why did I do this? Some unfortunately take themselves out because they just can't live with what's happened to them.
You know
Others are
how they've
speaking
been,
out
oh, sorry.
be- because they knew they were manipulated. They knew
Hmm.
they did not have, you know, months and months and months of counseling. It was a 5-minute process. And here's some puberty blockers for you. No, that's dangerous. And when you're giving a female hormone to a biological male, going to have adverse mental effects across the board. Now, I understand there are true transgender people that
Hmm.
just don't feel comfortable in their body. They're the old school drag queens and all that, but the ones that they think it's a popular thing to
Hmm.
do now is what I have a problem with. And they're
Yes.
targeting children. Now, I've got cousin, that's no, he grew up saying, I'm a woman. And when that little commercial was out, actually, and it was so cute, but we knew he was gay then. But I don't think he ever wanted to be a girl, and I never wanted to be a boy. But if we were growing up now, they
Hmm.
would almost mandate that we try to reassign ourselves into the opposite gender of who we are.
And
I
I can remember people used to say, let your children play with whatever toys they want. A girl can play with a G.I. Joe or a truck or a race truck thing, and
exactly.
a
I
boy
loved
can play with a doll or a Barbie doll, and it's all okay. And then all of a sudden now, it's all reversed. He's playing with a Barbie doll. He's a
maybe
girl.
he's gay. And
He's
it's like
wearing pink.
I used to play with Micronauts. These were
Mm-hmm.
pre-Transformers.
Right.
The Transformers more than meets the eye. These were the original Transformers. They were called Micronauts. I loved them. I had the entire space station. I'd get more every Christmas. I loved them. I loved the boys' toys. I never liked Barbies. I never liked that kind of stuff. I liked to take things apart and figure out how
Mm-hmm.
they worked. My dad understood that, and he promoted that in me. And I learned how to be mechanical. I learned how to, take apart an engine and put it back together again. I learned to explore outside the boundaries of my gender.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean I want to be the opposite gender. I'm a tomboy. I like being a tomboy. My hair is so thick, I like it short because God Almighty, it's so hot. So I cut my hair short in the summer because it is so incredibly hot. I work outside. I work in a predominantly male environment in the finance world, but I am a woman and I like being a woman. But
Amen, sister.
I don't understand why we're targeting children. I don't
Yeah.
understand why we're targeting prepubescent children.
You know
I
what
don't
I don't
understand.
understand the most is why people cannot see the problem with it. You have to be 18 to vote. You have to be 18 to serve in the military.
To
You
smoke a
have to
cigarette, to
21 now. I
yeah.
was smoking at 12. Thank you very
I was
much.
like,
Sorry. I mean, it's just the truth
snatching my
of
mama's
Gen
cigarettes
Xers.
at like 9, 10 years old.
Yes, we could go and buy a pack of cigarettes for our parents.
Exactly.
Alcohol,
Yeah.
no, but
Yeah.
cigarettes, yes.
Cigarettes we could with a note from my mom. I could go
And
buy a pack of Moors,
what I
the long
don't
brown.
understand. Oh gosh, I remember those. I
Yeah.
don't even think they make them anymore.
Oh, I have no idea. I don't smoke those.
But
But
it's just the fact that you're saying children are too young to do all of these
yes.
adult things, but they're young and at 2. My child knew she wanted to be a he. Absolutely not. That is
No,
you
that
putting
is
that
you.
into your
That's
child's
right.
head, and you need to stop because actually they were
That
saying
is
if you
correct.
don't trans your child, they're going to commit suicide. Well, what have we found out 10 years down the road that they're committing suicide later because
Correct.
of what was done to them when they didn't have
Correct.
the ability to make that choice. When it's something that, okay, bell bottoms came and went, and they're making a
Correct.
comeback again.
This is a fad.
It's a
I don't think,
fad
every college girl, I hate to say it, has probably experimented with the same-sex relationship at least once, because they're girly
that
girls.
doesn't make her a lesbian.
No, it does not. And I'm sorry, I've had plenty of toaster ovens. If y'all remember Ellen DeGeneres, I don't want to bring her up on this, but she's a scumbag now. But
Hmm.
Ellen DeGeneres was, hey, you get a toaster oven if you converted a married woman into a lesbian. I've got a couple of toaster oven urns. But that's not the basis for it all. I'm an adult. I was 26, 27, 28 years old when I came out, you know, and I felt comfortable. But that does not mean at 17 I didn't have those feelings. I did, but it wasn't socially acceptable. Okay. Yeah, no,
Well,
yes,
you
no.
also need to verify. You need time to, I'm sure, I'm straight, but I would
Right.
imagine that that's a process. That's something you have to think about for a little while. Most of my friends, especially Gen X gays, they tried the straight life
We did
first
because we
as
didn't want
much
to
until they
disappoint our
couldn't.
parents
Yeah,
until
until
we,
they couldn't
right.
anymore. I'm sure that's one of the most difficult conversations to have,
Mhm.
you know, to
And
let everybody know. And then
it
you
wasn't an
probably lose
easy
people.
decision. It was not. It wasn't something that I just spent, oh, I guess I'm gay today. No, these decisions, and I experimented both sides of the coin. I've got two children, so you can't tell me I haven't, you know, um, but it just wasn't there. The intimacy, not sexual intimacy, the intimacy that I craved to be with was always with female. And it was that connection. And that's a lot of what
But you
that
came by it organically, not because a
correct.
Tavistock Institute
No.
or
And I
college told you, hey,
correct.
you know,
And I grew up, Oklahoma State University. That's where I got, my degree in information technology. And there wasn't a whole lot of gay people there. There was one that I got close to, and that was where the attraction, second time it built. The first time it was from my best friend through high school. Second time was her through college, but I was married, so I never acted on it until after I divorced because I didn't feel proper. Because I do believe
well,
that when
marriage
you're
is
with
sacred.
when you're with somebody, you are with that person
Right.
until you're not. And then you separate from them. You do not act on anything. And
Exactly.
if you're feeling emotional towards somebody else, then you're not true to that marriage.
Right.
Now, I went into the army. Um, I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to the army. I need to get away from here for a little while. I need to find myself. And it wasn't to be gay in the army. No, it was I'm going to move forward
Don't
with my
ask, don't
life.
tell.
Right. That's where I fell under. And I went through the army. And then when I came home after a lot of my training, I found out my husband was cheating on me. And I was
Mm.
just like, well, that kind of gives me the excuse. I never cheated on him. I never, I don't do that because I believe the sanctity of a relationship is just that. It is a sanctity
Absolutely.
of a commitment, whether you're in a gay relationship or a straight relationship. If the relationship is there and you actually have feelings for that individual, then you need to respect that individual. Tell him, hey man, gone. But he's the one who stepped out on us, and I guess that made my life a little easier. And I was like, you know what? Here we go. You go your way, I go my way. We don't know anything. We had my son and my daughter, and of course, I had custody and everything. So I moved back to Virginia, and that's when I started exploring who I was. But while my kids were little, they never met any of my people I dated because
Well,
it
and
wasn't.
that could go for a straight relationship too,
Mhm.
because you don't want to be introducing people into your children's lives, no matter what
Right.
the biology of it is, for them to get attached to this boyfriend or that girlfriend and
I
then
didn't
they're
want to put them through
gone.
that. Correct.
Until it's serious, I think people ought to practice that,
Yeah.
actually.
Well, it took until my kids were grown, um, before I actually went into a very serious relationship. I didn't date anybody for years because I did not want to put my kids through that. I did not want them. So I did
You
what I
were
was supposed to.
focused on them.
I was focused on raising them, and that's what I did. And then once I knew they were settled and they were going,
Something going on.
I think so. I hear it in my headphones, you know, until I understood that, okay, now they're grown, they're individuals, they've graduated high school. Now I can start actually finding, a partner that I might be interested in. And it didn't take long. So, but anyway, back to how Tavistock,
No,
that's
I think
so,
that conversation was important, Dawn's race, because people need to see that these things are will develop organically and
yes,
naturally if you'll just stay out of it
stay out of it.
institutionally.
Don't judge. When we got our right to marry, I thought that was it because it was like, okay, we're not going to be judged anymore. And that was the hardest part, was being judged, and you're still going to find stupid people around anywhere. I mean, we have whole countries that hate us because we allow it in our country. And it's, kind of stupid, I think, but neither here nor there. You're not judged anymore, but the forcing it on the younger generation is what I have a problem with, I think.
Mhm.
And that's the biggest issues I have. They
And
just
that's what I've heard most Gen X gay in the gay community, gay or lesbian,
right.
say and vocalize that leave the children out of it. I mean, because most of them do, whether they adopted, whether they had their own children,
Hmm.
through a heterosexual relationship, they don't want their children exposed to it either. When it comes to that conversation, it doesn't belong in the school.
It does not belong in the
Maybe a
schools.
health class, but
I don't even think it went over when I went through like sex ed class in the sixth grade. You know, we just got basic biology and female anatomy and male anatomy and stuff like that, and then we were separated girls and boys and explained what's happening through puberty. But, I don't think we did like same sex stuff. And I
no,
don't
that
think
wasn't
that should
addressed at
be,
all.
I don't think that really should be a talking point,
It just needs to be
in
a basic
schools.
birds and bees. Women,
Yeah.
you don't want a situation like Carrie from Stephen King where the girl doesn't even know she's going to have her period. And I
Yeah.
think that was the purpose of a health class,
Yeah.
mostly for females who these things may not have been taught at
Through their
home
parents. Right.
for whatever reason, and boys too, need to learn about that stuff and how babies are made. So just in case they have any
Yeah.
questions, you know.
Well, I mean,
Anyway,
with Tavistock and its ties to the education system, we can kind of zoom out to like our
right.
modern day education. It's declining test scores. We see it, in many Western countries, rising mental health issues among youth, you know, curricula emphasizing social emotional learning, SEL. We've heard these DEI initiatives and identity over academics. It mirrors everything that Tavistock is putting out. the group dynamics and, the social adjustment priorities. And I think that's the biggest problem that I have is it's training for compliance in a globalized, I guess, technocratic world rather than a critical thinking traditional world where we need, in my opinion, we need those critical thinkers. We need those innovators. Elon Musk is not going to last forever. You know, I'm sorry, he's not. He may be able to transfer his consciousness, and maybe that's what they want. They want these
Eh,
certain individuals that are the only innovators, and everybody else just be the little robot drones. I don't know. You know, sensitivity training and teachers, focus on collective trauma, equity over individual merit. That bothers me
mhm.
because I think everybody should stand on their own merits. Whether you have bad aspects that you've overcame in your life and you've, now layered over all the good merits, you should be able to stand on your own merit, not a group. Oh, because I'm gay, now I'm going to get an extra brownie point. No,
Yes,
you
I
know,
agree. I mean, you go no, and I go yes, no, but I didn't mean yes. I was agreeing with
right.
you.
Yeah, right.
So,
You should be able to stand on your knowledge, your gains, and not have to ride a social construct in order to
mhm.
be successful.
Well, it
I don't,
holds people back too. It
they say
keeps.
it distributes, but what you're doing is you're putting unqualified people into positions of
Mhm.
authority.
I
And
want the best surgeon, the best pilot, and I don't
that's
care
correct.
the race or sexuality of that
I
person.
don't.
Are they really great at what they do, and do they
Exactly.
have a good reputation? That's what I'm going on.
Exactly. That's the biggest thing. I think that we should be more focused on merit versus the social construct of that merit. I don't want the points because I'm gay or because I'm a female in a man's world. I want the points because I'm good at what I do. I'm a good technician. I'm a good leader. That's what I want. I don't want the overarching thing to be, oh, well, she got the job because she's gay. No,
Yeah.
I don't want the job. If I, interview with a company and they ask, what do you identify as? I don't identify as anything. I'm gone because
Mhm.
I believe that company pushes the wrong initiatives forward and focuses on the wrong thing. Means I won't get along well because I speak my mind. I'm an individual first. You know, I have my own thoughts, my own goals, and my own merits that I bring to the table. You know, I'm not going to step aside and let my sexual identity or my, sexual preference be the ruling factor that I got this job. I got this job because my merit shows I can do this job effectively and I'm the best candidate for that job. And that's the biggest thing with Tavistock right now is they're pushing all these initiatives and they are breaking down that structure and we are not getting the best and the brightest. We're getting, oh, we have to have a
Tokens.
certain, yeah, we're getting the tokens and the tokens are getting paid the same as the best and the brightest. So they're even breaking it down further of, this person didn't deserve this merit increase and this person deserved a merit increase, but we got to keep it even. So we give them both the same merit increase. But this person didn't do the work and
Or
this person
maybe the
did.
person that deserves it more gets far less
Yeah.
than what they could have gotten. The person without the merit or lower and basic shouldn't get anything until they can raise up to, the standards. We should be uplifting people and not lowering standards. You should
Agreed.
raise to that, and you should. Not everybody's going to strive. Not everybody's got the same drive, initiative, tenacity to stick with things. And that's going to sort itself out. But that's where you get the best of the best in every field, whether it's nursing or doctors or flying a plane or firefighter, whatever it is. You want the best there.
Well, I mean, Tavistock is the double-edged sword. We need to know, about the psychology, and the applied psychology of the human psyche and
Hmm.
tools that can heal, with organizations that can reshape our future. But we also don't need that dark side of, where they're empowered to control, evidence and their ideologies. We need to retain our own independent ideology. And that's what I think the biggest thing, education is ground zero because the minds are formed there, you know. Question the systems, demand evidence and prioritize truth. That's not what Tavistock wants. They want little drones. So what do you all think? Do you all think that Tavistock is the evil entity behind our school systems? And if so, we would like to hear some comments from you. Go ahead and like and subscribe. And in the next episode, we're going to be talking about the Committee of 300 and the Club of Rome, which is all part of Tavistock, believe it or not.
I wanted to mention one thing, a book that people may
Okay,
be interested in real quick.
certainly.
It's called Indoctrinating Our Children by Alex Newman, spelled exactly the way it sounds,
Okay,
Newman. I've read it. It's great. I'll talk about the other two books. I'll recommend them next week because it's more
okay.
apropos for that. But anyway, Indoctrinating Our Children by Alex Newman, I highly recommend. I can't recall if he mentioned Tavistock in it, but I wouldn't be surprised. It's been a while since I read
I
it.
wouldn't be surprised on with a topic like that because it's definitely Tavistock is the one that is shaping our current systems since 1947. So thanks for
Yeah.
listening, guys. Stay
Thank you.
curious, stay vigilant, think for yourself, and question authority. Peace.